I hadn't done this until like 2 days ago when I messaged you about it, but I searched my name in the Apple Podcast app and I was
Mhm.
alarmed at how many times it's been mentioned. I was like, no, am I going to be forever known as that girl with the Waymo parking lot in front of her apartment? Oh, no.
Yeah.
Oh,
This
yeah.
is your chance to take it over and like do something different
Yeah,
with
like
your
runtime
life.
wasn't even in like the first like five, like seven results. I was like, oh God, what have I done? Welcome to Runtime 95 Podcast. My name is Sophia Tung, and with me is Zach Hall. We are the two hosts for this show. We talk about
Yeah.
I don't know, what do we talk about? News and banter and stuff.
I'm thinking that the topics from episode 1, which was like episode 0, we just continuously follow up on those, and then that's the podcast. It's like
Yeah.
whatever we started out with. And then it's just a continuous loop of why did we do this? Well, we did it then, and now we always a segment on this thing because it
Yeah.
keeps happening. That's what's happening for me, at least. Is like, what is this podcast about? Well, it's about like supersonic planes and self-driving cars and VR headsets, and we do cultural predictions and
Yeah.
that kind of thing.
It's the world at large from a tech adjacent mindset. I think that's the best way to sort of simplify it.
Yeah, I
Sort of,
mean, for myself, I can say that doing 9 to 5 Mac happy hour for I think 7 or 8 years, that the focus there is necessarily Apple. It's like what happened in the last 7 days of Apple. Let's go in deep on it and discuss that. And if you're a huge Apple fan, that's awesome because you're getting the best Apple, analysis, the best takes from the people who, that's where they live and breathe for a living, myself included. But personally, I'm also just like super interested. Generative AI has been
mhm.
amazing in my life. And for the longest time, there wasn't really an Apple angle to it beyond, it runs on Apple platforms. And then Apple Intelligence came about, and it's like that's got the same update cadence as an Apple app does. It's annual. It's not. It's like annually. Here's what we're gonna do the next 12 months, and it's kind of like what we've seen. It's like baby versions of what we saw 2 years ago, generative AI, and like we're gonna do it in slowly over the next 12 months. So like that's hard to stay excited about for me. Other stuff that's in the Apple ecosystem, like news wise, is great, but self driving is not happening in Apple
Yep.
world. Like
Nope.
the car project was a decade long thing that stalled out.
Yeah. Tim Apple was just like, never mind.
Yeah, yeah. So that, and then there is some crossover with like I've got a huge interest in space and like where technology comes in there, what like modern rocket development is like, and like even missions and things that are happening currently. Because a few years ago, at this point, it was 3 or 4 years ago, I was invited out to NASA, Kennedy Space Center in Cape Canaveral, Florida, to see a SpaceX rocket launch. And it's through this initiative called NASA Social, and it's just let's get people who like space, but they've got an audience on social media that's not space, like
Yeah.
specifically not space. And so, my pitch was like Apple fans, and then I'm curious about space. Let's see what this is all about. And I went to a rocket launch. It was a SpaceX Falcon 9 rocket launch, from Kennedy Space Center, and there was like tours of what NASA's doing out there, and it was just a big like mind shift for me from space and NASA being like the 70s and like what are they even doing these days to like all these people around me that were super smart about what's happening in space news. And then the rocket launch itself was like this adrenaline rush that lasted for 6 months. Anyway, I've got a lot more interest in just Apple stuff, and I feel like I'm also good at explaining like complicated stories in a way that people can
Yeah.
digest and then retell. And so for me, this podcast runtime is like, let's create a space where we can talk about Apple stuff, but we're definitely not under the directive of stay in the Apple lane. And in fact, for me, like we both contribute equally to the show and the show prep and everything. And I will let you bring the Apple topics to the show because for me, I've written about them. They're covered on the site. There's 9 to 5 Mac happy hour for that. I'll let my colleagues do that. But then like if you say, let's talk about hot tub in the alt store, okay, well, I can talk about that. I
Yeah.
will, I feel like, if you were to call up a subject, expert, it'd be fine to call me for that. And so for that, like for those reasons, I'll talk about Apple stuff here, but it'll be like when you bring it to the table and I'll, give my perspective. But really for me, just expect like just a variety of things that are probably not Apple. And then also you and I, Sophia, have different interests and expertise and experience. You're a YouTube creator, and I don't know how to, you know, do anything with video
Well, I mean, it's like something.
except for
Yeah, it's like
except for
something that can
this.
be learned. Like, I feel like the thing that's interesting here is, despite it being all tech, like we we have like such a wide ranging, like, disparate like set of interests. Like, I'm coming from this more of like a either emerging or like obscure technology standpoint. Like, I love retro stuff. I like futuristic stuff. Like, the current stuff is like, okay, like it's, it's fine. But my main passions are oh, what's going on in like the world of autonomy? Like, it was uh a little bit of a godsend that the Waymos started parking in front of my apartment and honking in the middle of the night, to be quite honest, because I don't
Yeah.
know how I could have immediately gotten access to so many interesting people if that hadn't happened. Like, I
Right.
got to
Yeah.
talk at length with Vishay, who manages a significant part of like the Waymo products, and I got to like, question him about a lot of stuff that's been going on that, historically, like, Waymo has been very silent about. I was able to sort of get access. Like, a lot of people actually reached out to me and was like, "Hey, do you want to hear about like other stuff that's going on?" Like, the Internet Archive like reached out to me, which is like fantastic. Like, you hear about the Internet Archive, they're an organization that is sort of like ever present, and you sort of expect things to be archived, but like, how does it actually work? And so like now I'm working on them with like a couple of projects,
Yeah.
which I will probably be revealing pretty soon. But like, that kind of opportunity doesn't
Nice.
come to just anybody, I feel like. And I feel like I've been extremely
Yeah.
lucky to sort of been able to like launch off of the slight infamy that came from the Waymo stuff and branch out into other things.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
like that's really like where I'm coming from for all of this.
And that's what I like about you, Sophia, is that I've got this experience with Apple coverage and you know, once a year, maybe coming out to the West Coast and spending a day or two, for an event or something. But you live in San
Yeah.
Francisco. You've got like your background is like your life is in the tech circle. Like, you're exposed to it by way of waking up and
Yeah.
like that's your neighborhood.
Yeah.
Where
Well, yeah, I've got I've
where
got
I'm
I've
yeah
got Waymos and Zooks
yeah
running around my neighborhood, which I guess is more than most people.
yeah
Yeah.
yeah where I live on the Gulf Coast, in the South, and it's not where you'd think that a 9 to 5 Mac author would be headquartered, but it's a remote work and it's where my family is. So as long as my kids are here,
Yeah,
me
right,
too.
right. Like, if if you can make a career out of it, then like, why not, right? Like, it doesn't if you can live off of it, if you can make money off of it, then like, there's no reason not to. Like, 95 Mac, like, I get all my Apple stories from 95 Mac. Like, there's no other like
Yeah, I
site. Like, I think I used to follow like way back when I used to follow like Apple Insider or something. But like, I feel like the
mhm.
quality, like the amount of stories and like the quality and stuff is just like not it's not to like the 95 level. And then I started following like Electrek, and then I started
Yeah.
following like 95 Google to know like what's going on the other side. Maybe this is bad, but like, there is no other news source that I have. Well, except from like The Verge, but like, The Verge
Yeah,
is
right, right.
not like very like Apple specific. It's like they mix like tech and politics, and sometimes I don't want to see the politics. I just want to see like
Mm.
the dumb stories that come out of
Mhm.
tech, and I'm like, okay, yeah,
Yeah, I wish that we would have, and this has been discussed before, but just a top level
yeah,
domain that is all of the specific sites,
yeah,
curated there. Like, just be the top performers or the ones that you feature or whatever, but it would be like not the nuanced stuff, but like the bigger story stuff. And then that site, call it 9 to 5, would be where all the stuff
hmm
goes to live. But then if you're like super into one of the verticals, EVs, you go to electric and then you get the full feed. Or Apple, you get the full feed
yeah.
that way. So
Like
yeah.
that
Yeah.
makes a lot of sense to me. Like you have everything,
Yeah.
right?
And
Everything that matters, let's say.
yeah.
So like you've got Apple, you've got
Right.
Google, you've got like the EV stuff, which also includes like the micromobility stuff, and then you've got, I don't know, you
Mhm.
got drones, right? Eh,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's drone
And
DJ
it's like,
for
why would you
drones.
not,
Yeah.
like, for those who want a The Verge style site, because if you combine like all the powers combined, you can make one super site, and that basically is like
Hmm.
the Verge replacement or something. I
Yeah.
don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe like, you could argue like quality of
Yeah.
journalism, like all that, but like if you want just the news, could be something.
Yeah. Yeah. And the closest thing to that is there's a lot of, I think you see it more on the desktop, but it's there. Well, it's there on mobile as well. But there's the cross site slider, so you'll see on the desktop in the sidebar on the right, you'll see stories from featured stories from other sites, and then that's all manual though. It isn't like automatically generated. It's like what 4 stories are you featuring, today or this week or this hour, and that shows up as you scroll the site, and it reorders. But I would love just to see, and there's like a higher level domain than 9 to 5 Mac. It's just that in that we're all under that, but that domain doesn't do anything, and it's a
I
.co.
mean,
So
if you have 9to5.co, well, I mean, .co is not bad also.
electric is a .co. It
Yeah,
isn't a
right.
.com.
So like, why not?
Yeah,
Right.
yeah, and it's significant. We have one publisher, Seth Weintraub, and he's just you know he's the inventor of the nine to
Right.
five
Okay.
network. He is like the sole owner of the 9 to 5 like enterprise as a company,
So
and
he makes the
then
decisions, or he can make
you
the
know
decision to like get like a top level.
yeah, yeah,
Right.
yeah. He's the owner. He's the one that has that. And we got close to
Mm.
there a few years ago because he likes the idea too. We got close to that a few years ago, but it stalled because we couldn't
Oh
decide what to call it. Like
no.
there was because there's 9 to 5 Mac,
Yeah.
Google, and toys, but there's electric, drone DJ, space explored, uh, connect the watts. This is like
Yeah.
a
Yeah.
connected fitness site,
Yeah. Yeah.
and so none of the new ones are 9 to 5, and because electric is like 9 to 5 Mac size and like 9 to 5 Google size, it's like I mean that's kind of the holdup. Is like, well, electric isn't really 9 to 5 branded, but people know that it's connected. Like people get that, even if they don't know. Like you can get to one site from the other one at the top of
Yeah.
the homepage.
Oh my god, just because of the name, like honestly, like nine to
Yeah,
five is so brandable. It's fine if electric
yeah,
is
and
not
I
called 9 to 5 electric or whatever. I don't know, but like,
yeah
like if you just have like literally like 9 to 5. Oh, where do you get your news? 9 to 5. Like
yeah
easy,
9 to 5
easy.
people. It would literally be 9 to 5 because like the domain is the
Yeah.
numerals 925 like .co. Like,
What a missed
the other thing
opportunity.
is the space site I named Space Explored, and that was in 2020, and I regret not having it be a 9 to 5 because I think that would have helped it grow and like the branding. Like the branding is what it is now. Like people know it as Space Explored. It's credentialed with NASA and
Oh
SpaceX and
wow.
et cetera. But yeah, but if it were like 9 to 5 space, that would just be the obvious thing, and I just didn't want to do that when I was trying to come up with the name. Also, I started it on my own, like I was a 9 to 5
uh
Mac employee, and but it wasn't like, hey, let's do a space site. It was like maybe we could do a space site one day, and so the kind of the directive there was, spin it up and like show that you're into it, and then we'll see what happens. And then so then and like that, because like we kind of agreed on the name together. And 9 to 5 space, like I think if it would have been that, it just would have began on the network the whole time. But like it got literally like sucked into the network, like same
Yeah.
WordPress, everything, VIP, all that. But then over the last month or so, I've been doing like I wanted to sneak in just AI news because there's so much of it, and there's not like that I know of yet, like an AI news site that's just covering all of the AI stuff. I think the closest thing that you'll see is like specific authors' blogs, and then they're doing think pieces about it, but it isn't like the 9 to 5 Mac style minutia of the day of AI news. And so 9 to 5 Neural is just a series of posts that I'm doing on 9 to 5 Mac, but I'm trying to brand it such that if it were its own site, like this is the stuff that would
I
go
think
there.
that would be a really good move. Like honestly.
Yeah. And because of the uphill challenge of 9 to 5 or of space explored being like going from zero to something, it was very hard. Like, because I think you probably go like 1 to 2 years without seeing a
Yeah.
return on your time. And then my responsibilities as a parent, like it didn't align. And so, I think I just had like too many responsibilities that I'd taken on that I couldn't do that. And luckily I'd met I made a really good friend through Space Explored, Seth Kurkowski, and he was like, well, this is like my thing. Like I care a lot about this thing. And I was like, take it and run it. And he's done that for several years now. Does a good job. But for that reason though, like I know the uphill challenge of doing a new vertical from scratch, and like even with the 9 to 5 network effect, it's hard. You've got to put in a lot of stuff that gets no return. And like for the 9 to 5 Neural post, just being on 9 to 5 Mac, like there's Apple connections. I mean, ChatGPT is plugged into Apple Intelligence. These services mostly have apps. On the ones that don't need apps, just figuring it out as we go. 12 years on for me, at least.
Yeah. I mean, that's it. It is. I feel like it's a little bit of a shame because like there should be just one like news site that you should be able to just refer to like every single day. Like this is what happens. The Elon and Altman. The girls are fighting again. Like let's like this. This is what's
Yeah.
going on. And like like I mean, the Verge has like their like AI reporter, like who is specifically on like the AI beat, right? Like Kylie, like she's like just she's got the contacts, she's like pumping out like the articles or whatever. But it is still sort of in the larger sense of like just the Verge. Like it would be good if I could, because like I feel like the way like I get my news is like I follow a bunch of like I follow 9to 5 Mac, I follow 9to 5 Google, and then I like if I don't want to hear any of like a specific news, I don't look at it. But like when I do want to catch up with like somewhere where I can just go type in my address bar, like 9 to 5 Neural, like boom, all my AI news, I can catch up in like 20 minutes. I'm done.
Yeah. And I think we'll probably do something like, and I could do this today, but just make 9to5mac.com/AI go to the 9 to 5 Neural like tag guide, basically. And then that would be all the stories from that, that would be a super medium ground way to do that.
Yeah, this setup is super cool. Like this is the first time I've used any sort of like professional like audio equipment, but this is super easy to set up. Like huge thanks to Røde for sending this stuff over. I mean, we're like I'm just sitting here and I'm looking at this equipment. I'm just like, dang, like professional podcasting. Like, let's go.
I mean, so yeah, we've got Røde, their newest editions of everything. So with the old podcast happy hour, I had a Røde pod mic that was USB B in the back, and then USB, A into the computer or whatever cable you used. And then it had a headphone jack, and you'd listen that way. And I used that, and it still works perfectly. It's the V1, like it's the original version of it, and it's from, a decade plus ago. and Rode PR had pitched us on some new lav mic products that they were doing, and one of the products did really really well in terms of like popularity with readers. And I just mentioned to the people that I was meeting through Rode PR, like, by the way, I'm using this 10-year-old podcast setup that was just a USB mic, and it would be really cool to try out the new stuff and see what that's like. And that was, and I didn't have a podcast at the time because I'd been off of happy hour for a year and a half. And so receiving the Rode hardware was like the biggest driver for me to follow up on that promise, that pitch to Rode, and
Oh
actually make
yeah.
a podcast.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
and then you were like, "Hey,
Yeah.
BT Dubs, I got my co-host here."
Yeah. Yeah. That was the coolest thing too, was like, um they've got these podcast bundles that and so what we have are Rodecaster Duo input boxes, like
Yeah,
interfaces.
mixers, or I don't
Um
even know what to call this thing. This
Mixers.
this is so it's like a whole like pad with like you've got like faders, you've got like what is this? Like sound box, like I can like, thank you. Thank you. Uh you don't have to. It's okay. Yeah, thanks. I'm good, aren't I? Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, and these are XLR mics. It's the first time I've ever used that stuff. It's like, yeah, this upped the game way up. And I've had this stuff for about 6 weeks, and I'm still sort of like learning what the box itself does, but it's amazing. And then you just received your stuff, which was super cool of Rode to send to you as
Yeah, I'm
well.
like a nobody. Like
Because
they don't even know who I am.
no. See, I feel like coming to you, like you're the one with the YouTube channel, and like, being quoted in the New York Times is like, the Waymos went
Yeah,
off.
that the one thing I'm
you know,
infamous
the-
for. I hadn't done this until like 2 days ago when I messaged you about it, but I searched my name in the Apple Podcast app, and I was
Mhm.
alarmed at how many times it's been mentioned. I was like, "No. Am I gonna be forever known as that girl with the Waymo parking lot in front of her apartment? No."
This is your chance to take it over and like do something different
Yeah,
with
like
your
Runtime
life.
wasn't even in like the first like 5, like 7 results. I was like, "Oh god, what have I
Right.
done?"
Yeah. I wanted to, jump into the show and thank you for the handcrafted podcast that you produced last week. That we, episode one, like we're figuring out, how to do this. It's been a while for me, and I've never done video before, and we're doing, we're using new tools and everything. And then last week we got a lot better, in terms of what we put out. But it was mostly because you took over what I was doing and then spent, a quarter of your day
Oh
or
yeah, it was a
more
little bit of an all-nighter
overnight
I pulled. Probably
putting
should
this thing
do that
together.
again, but I think we
Yeah.
really wanted to have this podcast sort of be like you're going into the weekend, you're trying to chill, like you might not have gotten every part of what's going on in the news cycle during the week because you're busy and like things happen, and not everybody, like let's be honest, like not everybody keeps up with the news. Like most people just sort of hear things through the grapevine. So um I think what I would like to happen is for this show to be like a little bit of an entryway through the grapevine, like what what has happened, but let's chat about it in like a like chill fashion. Like we're just two chill people, like,
Yeah. Yeah.
we're just hanging out, and you're just overhearing us from the next table over.
For me, I have a lot of like time spent with people. Some people I know, but some people I don't. And you develop this relationship one sided. Parasocial, but um, podcasts keep me
Yeah.
company in lots of ways. And one of the coolest things I think about tech podcasts in particular is that you may be super enthusiastic about something, and like your partner or your
Yeah.
friends do not
Yeah.
care. And like you've got no one to talk about those things with, and they just cannot appreciate why you're excited about this random thing. And so with tech podcasts, it's like you found your people, and you don't even have to have a back and forth conversation. Like, you're saying things that you're like, yeah, exactly, yeah, 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 and you want to. It's like you're part of the conversation, and that's something that for me too was I listen. I don't read news online really. Like, I'm on social media all day looking for
Mhm.
stories and that kind of thing. But if it's like a day off or something, I'm not watching my screen refresh with
Yeah, even
posts and
writers gotta
stuff.
unplug sometimes.
And yeah, and I never got it like 12 years ago when I was just kind of meeting Mark Gurman, and he was at 9 to 5 Mac, and he was like, I'm like, what do you read? And he's like, I don't read Apple News. Like, I make it, but I don't consume it. And it's kind of like, yeah, because those are all like your colleagues, you're all doing something similar and you celebrate each other, but you're no longer a consumer of those things. And so I think that's where some of my other interests come in too. But all that to say that, but I do listen to podcasts, and I will listen to like this duo and this trio, like these types of people talk about the same thing as they did, but it's a little bit different because of the dynamic of the relationship and like their take on it, and like even things they decide to pull out of the story and focus on. And so I'm a big podcast listener, and so for that reason, I feel compelled to continue to contribute, because I knew I've done it before. That like, why am I not making this? Why am I not? If I hit the bottom of my podcast queue and like there's not a new thing to
Yeah.
play, sometimes I'll feel like, oh, where'd my friends go? Like it was just me here now, and so if I could do a podcast every day and stay in someone's feed so that they don't hit that dead end and feel that way, then that's something cool to do. So
Yeah.
um, all that to say that you handcrafted last week's episode, and I wanted to relay a story to you about a time when I was sort of initiated in the same way, which is probably in 2014 or 15. I'd recorded an episode of Happy Hour, and this is audio only, no video, but I at the end of it, my
Oh
microphone, it was the
god.
wrong one, and I just couldn't let it go, and I couldn't improve the audio enough. And so what I did was I listened to what I said, and then I voiceovered, I
No.
re-recorded it. Yeah. And so everything on the podcast for that one episode, whatever it was me listening to what I said, trying to say it the same way, and it was just a total recreation. And then the thing with podcasts too is like, I do go back through the backlog if I find a new show I like, and I'll start from
Yeah.
one and go through if kind of one more episodes and they're there. But podcasts, weekly show kind of has a 1 week shelf life. So all that work for something that may never get touched again beyond that like 14-day period, let's say. But it was like a one and done thing. Never again will I ever put that much work into correcting an error like that. And I kind of took away that you reached the same conclusion from the magic you did to last week's
Yeah.
episode in the
Oh my
edit.
god. Last week, okay. So we're we're using this thing called Riverside. This is new to both of us, but it's supposed to be like an all-in-one tool. There was serious audio desync issues last week.
Before
Before
you
I
got
got
your
my
road
Rode stuff.
stuff.
Now with the Rode stuff, it's like perfect. But like I was using like a wireless lav mic, and unfortunately, that audio got baked into the video. Riverside does provide like a separate audio track or whatever, but like it's hard to like mix it all in the Riverside editor. So I just ended up downloading like the raw video and then the improved audio from Riverside, and I imported it all into DaVinci Resolve. And I was like, oh my god, this is like an hour and 30 minutes. I got to edit it down to like close to an hour, and then I was like, well, how am I gonna do like this is basically like a multicam setup. Like, how do I edit this? I've never done like a multicam setup before. Like, and it was just like figuring all out. And then the actual edit was like 5 hours it ended up being, because I'm sure I was just doing some dumb stuff, but I kept on like going back and like recutting some parts. And then next thing I knew, it was 6 a.m. and I was messaging Zach like, dude, I'm not doing this again. But here's the thing, but like I'm not doing this again. It was so bad.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I don't think I've ever been more grateful to a co-host.
Well, hey, we got it. Hey, good audio in 4K. What more can you ask for? So that was last week's episode.
That's
This
all
week,
right.
we've got
That's
brand
all right.
new equipment from Røde, and it should be all set up, and it should hopefully all be able to be done in Riverside. So we'll see this week, but
Yeah. Learning as we
yeah.
go with these new fancy tools. I know how to do a podcast. Like you record your side, they record their side, and you get the two audio files in Logic, and you do a few things, and then you're good to go. And this is just so much more. But I appreciate that podcasts are happening on YouTube, and that the video component provides even more company than just the audio component does. And even though I don't listen to podcasts on YouTube primarily, when there's a version of it, sometimes I'll go back and I'm like, oh, that was an awkward moment. Like,
Yeah,
what
yeah,
happened between those two
exactly.
people
But
just
also,
then? Let me
like
find
with
this part of the video.
the thing with the video component also is you can show what you're talking about, right? Like if we're talking about uh,
Mm.
a medium that is mostly like media. Like last week, I could edit in a whole bunch of like context about what we were talking about. So like, listeners like you don't have to go and click away and go look stuff up. Like, it's right there.
The presentation method for audio for the podcast is like doing chapter art, and I promise we'll get to chapters. I'm not ready for doing wiki
Riverside should
chapters
do
yet.
chapters
We'll get there.
automatically,
Okay.
supposedly.
uh, yeah, yeah. But my main focus is making sure that even though we're doing video, that the audio experience is just the same, because I'm an audio first listener, and like you were saying, like you're able to do something with a visual, but also give an audio
Yeah.
description to it, which is great. Yeah. I also wanted to give, this is in my notes, so I've got to do it, but I wanted to give a future shout out to the
Hmm.
listener from the future, the people who became fans at episode 75 or 210, and then going back through the catalog, and they heard the first one and they're like, oh, they really came, and then they heard the second one and they're like, wow, they got so much better. Well, in episode 3, I'm giving you a shout out. Thank you for revisiting our catalog from the year 2030. Because I
Yeah.
know it happens.
It
I do
I
it.
got really into
So I
this
was
this
thinking ahead of
podcast
time.
called Trash Taste. I've shared this with you, but I was like, oh man,
Yeah.
like these guys are so good now. But then I went back to episode 1 and it's like, whoa, what happened? So yeah, like Zach said, shout out to the future listeners, even more if you're watching on YouTube. Yeah. Congrats on
Yeah.
finding us
And
and
your
congrats on
and
sticking
your
around.
and your augmented reality, yeah, your AR contacts on Mars. Like,
Yeah, I
wow,
know,
you've come
right?
a long way. Changelog. This is where we discuss updates to previously mentioned stories. I also want to throw in a correction here on my behalf. Ghost Robotics, not Ghost Dynamics. I was telling you
Yeah.
about Verizon Frontline's robot dog, and the Boston, no, not Boston Dynamics, Ghost Dynamics, but that was wrong too. It's Ghost
Yeah.
Robotics, and yeah, I apologize to both breeds of robot dogs, and just really sorry about it.
Hey, even
I'm
if they're
sorry.
robots,
Ghost
they're still
Robotics.
good boys and girls.
Mm-hmm.
So they should
Mm-hmm.
all equally be
Mm-hmm.
recognized as what they are. And I appreciate the correction.
Yeah.
I'm standing in for the dogs right now. Woof.
Thank you. The cat owner is standing in for the dogs, as my dog is elsewhere. I wrote in our notes this week too. I'm going to reference the notes like it's a third host, that we'll talk about Boom again if it's interesting, because Boom was scheduled to do a supersonic flight for their supersonic experimental plane on Monday. And then before that flight even happened, Boom, the company, announced that what they did with the previous flight was go supersonic without creating the boom that their company's named after. And so they still made the boom, but it was just high enough up that that there was no audible sound on the ground. And they call it a boomless supersonic cruise. And this is just like this whole new thing that they had done on the stream, and no one, I mean, I guess if you were there, you knew, but otherwise, like, we didn't know. And then before they do the next one, they said, this is this new thing that we've developed because we make our own engines. We, can craft this thing, as they call it, a symphony engine, and their plane is the overture. They design this thing such that it's exactly what they need and expect. And what this does for the company is, rather than having to mostly focus on like flights over the ocean between continents because the sound isn't an issue over the ocean in the same way that it is like over the country. If they're able to do this boomless supersonic cruise, then they can do coast to coast and really create a super fast way to get across the country. Even like so, if you can take an 8-hour flight and make it a couple of hours or so, then you can make like a flight from Miami to New York be a matter of I don't know like minutes maybe if that kind of thing exists. So I was expecting like something here, but what they actually did, and they achieved a total of 6 of these, demonstrations of this boomless supersonic cruise. Like I was a little bit blown away all over
Yeah,
again by
it's
what they were
honestly
doing.
incredible. I actually ended up tuning into the live stream, the second one, and I was like,
Mhm.
I was watching them do the tests, and I was like, wait, isn't something supposed to happen? Like, aren't I supposed to hear something? And I hadn't caught because I tuned in maybe like halfway through their test. And it was like 10 minutes before they like wrapped up, and they were like, yeah, we're not getting the um like this is like the last flight and whatever. Um, and I was like, last time too, where are the booms? Like, what is going on? Are they actually supersonic? But yeah, they are. And it's incredible to me that they're able to do this. Because like the number one thing that people, have against like supersonic flight is like, oh, like noise pollution. Like we have enough noise pollution as it is,
Mhm.
right? Like communities are like there was an article recently that was just like this is what happened like to the community that was right under the flight of like LAX or something, like right beside the runway. And it's like a ghost town now because of the noise. Like we have enough noise pollution. But like if they can do this
Yeah.
without, making more noise pollution, that is, I think, the major holdup of supersonic flight solved. Right.
Yeah, yeah. Something that the CEO of Boom, Blake Scholl, said, and I'd love to talk
Oh
to him
God.
someday,
Yeah. If you're
on
listening,
this
you're probably
podcast.
not. But if you are,
Yeah.
we'd love you on the show.
we'll,
Yeah.
we'll make it happen. We have time. But he said, we're not done until we've made supersonic flight boring and routine. And I
Yeah.
love that. It's so simple. It's
Years
like,
ago,
yeah, that's the
I
goal.
guess when I was but an atom in the universe. I mean, normal flights were incredible, and now they're routine.
Oh, they kind of suck.
Yeah, now it's like a
Now it's like a
bus.
bus, a Greyhound in the
Yeah,
sky. It can be, yeah, yeah, yeah. Which is why supersonic,
yeah.
flight's
I
coming
get
back.
me on a supersonic flight. I want to get to London in 4 hours or 5 hours or however it is, however long it is.
What was your flight experience like going international
Oh
recently?
man, it was so I actually ended up flying Starlux, which is like a new airline out of Taiwan. So Taiwan has like 3 major airlines. There's like China Airlines, which is government owned, and then one is EVA, and then this new one is Starlux. So there's actually a little bit of drama that happened with Starlux because the CEO of Starlux used to be at EVA, and he left because he was like, man, EVA sucks. So he made his own airline, and the goal is like even if you're in economy, it's they try to give you, like the feeling of luxury while you don't actually have to pay for it, you know. So I was like, okay, I'll try it.
Yeah.
It was nice. Like the planes are new, like they have all this like new technology. The screens are nice. You've got like you can connect up to like your AirPods, and it's like Bluetooth, and it's super nice. Like the seats are comfortable. It's larger, but it is still like it feels like a bus. You can't really get away
Yeah,
from that.
yeah.
Like
It's
that's just the way that it is. So I would still have rather stayed on it for less time rather than for more time. If they were flying,
yeah.
overtures or whatever, from Boom Supersonic, then I could have not had to stay on it for like 14 hours or however long it was.
Yeah. Some other things I learned from the stream is that this was Monday. We're talking on, 2 days later, but that the Overture airliner design freezes
Which
in
is
a
so
week.
soon.
So by next week, like
Yeah.
they've got it locked in, right? Like the Symphony engine freezes in March. So next month, like that thing's locked in. No more changes. This is what goes into production. And they say that they'll be in the air with Overture in less than 4 years and ready for customers by 4 years from now, 2029. We can probably like add a year or two to
I
that
think it'll probably be like, yeah, like
for reality.
2030, like to be realistic.
2030, 2032. Yeah, yeah. And that they want to. So they talked about the boomless supersonic cruise, which is 1.3 Mach 1.3 at a high enough
Yeah.
altitude that it's not hard on the ground. But they want to be able to do a quiet boom someday. So not with the Overture aircraft, but that's a goal in the future, is to be able to do a low altitude supersonic flight that doesn't create a loud boom like the supersonic boom. And it's just so interesting because this is like a whole new area of interest
Yeah.
publicly for the company. They've obviously had this, the whole time, but to name the company after the thing that is like A, the problem with supersonic flight, and then B, like the thing that you're eliminating
It's
is just
so
neat. It's like,
it's like such smart
you're
marketing. Also, like, okay, as somebody who, so I'm like a classically trained musician, right? Can I need to
okay.
I need to appreciate
News.
the fact that they have named every part of the company after music terms, like the symphony engine,
Yeah.
the overture. Like, come
That's really
on.
good.
Like, what are they gonna name the seats next? Stands?
Right.
Like, the like, it's instead of, like, first class, second class, it's gonna be, like, first violin, second violin, viola section,
Yeah.
the winds, the
Yeah.
brass.
I also learned from the first stream and the second stream that when you go supersonic as a passenger, nothing, like, there's no sensation about it, and so they display the Mach speed so that
Yeah,
oh, you just
and they're
did
like, "Oh,
hit
we're
it.
definitely gonna bring
You're
that
there
back."
now.
I'm like, "Yeah, you better. I wanna see how fast I'm going."
Yeah, yeah. So I think that's this week in
Yeah,
Boom. Little meta commentary here from me again is that listening back to our show last week
yeah,
as audio, as I do, one thing I liked about it was that we pack in not just like 3 topics that we discuss in segments, but a lot of different stuff. Like, so if you find one thing that's not for you and we get to chapters eventually, I don't know. There's a
yeah, it's a
variety.
lot of stuff. Like,
We get to,
very dense. I think that's,
yeah. And,
like, something that I wanna maintain
yeah,
is, like, we go over, like, a lot of stuff. We touch on a lot of
me
topics,
too.
but, like, it's like a good roundup for just in general, because like, people who are gonna listen to this are gonna be listening to it, like, for just in general news. And this is very general.
Yeah. If you go 60 minutes and one of the topics, kind of lame, I'm like, you just
Yeah.
lost a third of your podcast. But if, like, you're not into one of the topics of like 20,
Yeah,
then
exactly.
there's more
Like,
for you.
people can just tune out for, like, 5 minutes, and then, like, when they come back, like, gonna be back to, something maybe they'll enjoy. Speaking
Yeah.
of enjoying, TikTok did not enjoy the whole T-Mobile Starlink thing. What happened with that? Do you know?
Last week. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. But then there was
yeah,
this
the
Super
Super
Bowl
Bowl
ad.
ad. I look, like, like I said last week, it's like it's not it's not really like that big of a deal, but the Super Bowl ad came up and they were like, "Here's how you can, like, anybody can sign up to this thing now."
Yeah, so we're talking about T-Mobile and their Starlink integration, where T-Mobile's taken a certain band of their network and allowed Starlink to run through it. And last week there was a story where TikTokers were spreading the idea that Apple and Starlink were directly partnered, and that everyone's phone now had Starlink. And like, if you were concerned about privacy, then like, don't update to the software update. And that just wasn't the case. It was just, if you're a T-Mobile customer, there's this new band that they're using for Starlink. And then we discussed that last week. Well, then there's a Super Bowl ad where they show that, and then they make this big announcement. So that they've already announced that there's a Starlink partnership that only T-Mobile has in the U.S. But then what was their announcement from
I
like in
think
their
the
ad?
announcement was like basically anybody can sign up to it as like an early access thing. I didn't actually see the ad like in
Yeah,
person, but I heard about it, and
uh-huh.
I don't know. I thought you might have like some more context about how to sign up to that.
Yeah. I heard it in real time, and I mean, as someone who is interested in this and thinks like it's a good thing to have the option for, I was like, oh wow, they kind of did a one more thing without saying one more thing, which is we just naturally assume that you would need to have Starlink service or T-Mobile service to have access to the Starlink, band of service. And that's normally how business works. But in this case, T-Mobile is saying, we're willing to sell you AT&T customer or Verizon customer or any other carrier in the US customer, for $20 a month, you can have this same feature that we're including on certain 5G plans for free. And if you don't have this T-Mobile plan, you can add it for $15 a month, after it launches in June. And so that was kind of cool I thought that was neat. And it does a little bit it kind of messes up the message of no, they didn't start Starlink on your phone. It's still opt-in. You paid T-Mobile for the service. And I imagine it's like an
I think
eSIM
so.
that picks up this wave.
But
Yeah, which is how they're doing it. But it was T-Mobile's done things in the past where they give you an eSIM or give you a SIM card or let you try their network for 30 days and make it really easy to switch back if you want to. And this isn't that. This is stay with AT&T, stay with Verizon, stay with whoever, and you can also be a T-Mobile customer for this specific feature. And that's kind of cool. I mean, and it also emphasized to me that Starlink, SpaceX doesn't have the infrastructure on its own. Even though it has this constellation of satellites in low Earth orbit, it doesn't have the necessary ground hardware to serve a nation, like a country of users. And they could do it, but why do that when you can license the feature to a carrier and, instead of investing in all this hardware, you can just, start monetizing the service today because you've got something that they don't
yeah, it's
have.
it is very
Pretty
clever.
clever.
You don't want to have to spend all that capital to set up your own carrier. That is not easy to start from the ground up. Even all of these low cost carriers, they're just buying capacity from a different carrier. If you're on Cricket, you're still on what is it, T-Mobile or something? I forget.
Or
Yeah,
AT&T,
you're still
or
on
one
one
of
of the
them. I
big
don't know.
ones
Yeah,
who actually provide the capacity. But
yeah,
they're just providing it at such a low
yeah.
cost that you then get passed on, the savings then pass on to you. Um, but yeah, to set up Starlink would necessarily have to set up a totally new system, just all across the country, and then service would not be good, and then you have to and it's a whole thing. But instead of doing that, why not just partner or license out your technology? You still earn the money, and you don't have to burn the capital. Yeah,
Yeah.
I think that's really smart.
Right. And yeah, and the satellite system itself is subsidized by SpaceX, and because they're not having to. It isn't like, hey, we have satellites and we got to pay for a ride to space. It's
Yeah.
all this one company, and and it seems to be very before the SpaceX business was government contracts, and then sending a satellite up for direct TV and ride sharing, have earning money that way. But with this, is we've got a customer user base that isn't just the government or a major company. So it's interesting. And if you look at the difference in, say, the built-in iPhone satellite feature and then what Starlink, how it's different is that the built-in satellite feature with, I forget the name of it, GeoStar maybe, but that's where Apple has
Yep.
their emergency SOS feature. And so far it's free. They haven't charged for it. They eventually probably will. Apple's investing in the company. They've got an ownership stake in, I think, the company and the satellite hardware. So they're kind of coming in from, a different door and into this. But that's these geo position satellites that are fixed. They, as the
Yeah.
Earth rotates, so do they, and so they're always there. And because they're further out, and then what Starlink is it's the constellation where every 7 minutes you're going to be talking to a new satellite, and hopefully, if there's enough coverage, then it's seamless. You're never losing signal. But because it's low Earth orbit, I guess there's a speed benefit and capabilities is better. So it's kind of cool that both of those things are existing on the iPhone without Apple actually doing a whole lot besides just taking in some band waves that they already
Yeah. I
did.
have no idea about any of the satellite stuff, but it blows my mind that you can basically now get data anywhere. If you really wanted to enough.
Yeah.
Like we went from like the big Starlink dishes to like the mini Starlink dishes, and now there's like it's your phone is capable of doing it. Like the technology aspect of this is incredible. Like the miniaturization process happened so fast. It's crazy.
Yeah. The benefit of the dishes, I guess, still is that you can be indoors
Yeah.
and you've got the dish outdoors. And so you've got, network coverage inside. And with the phone, you don't have the dish to rely on. And so I think there's still necessity of being like,
Yeah.
seeing the sky still.
Yeah. This will not work indoors. It will also not work like above a certain,
Right.
like if you're moving too fast or something, like that also won't work.
Hmm.
There's like a bunch of caveats for
Yeah.
this, but just the fact that you could like if I stepped outside right now and I turned off like my cell service, like I could probably still get
Yeah.
it. Like that's pretty sick to me.
Yeah. And I'm not someone who goes off the grid as much as I would like to, but I've heard from a lot of people who do just on a weekend and they go and hike this area and like it's just totally
Yeah.
expected that you're not going to have
But
coverage
now you
there.
can.
And
Yeah.
it's kind of cool.
Mm.
Yeah. And I'll also say that besides SpaceX, there's Amazon that has their Project Kuiper, I believe it's called, and that's just this super behind schedule competitors to Starlink, and it's yeah. I mean, it will get there eventually, I believe. There's obviously the capital behind it, with Amazon being
Yep.
being the company, but I think the hold up there has been they say that they're rocket agnostic and so they would pay SpaceX to send their satellites up and maybe they have, but because Blue Origin is like Jeff Bezos' space company and Amazon is Jeff Bezos's original company, there's a I imagine there's a desire to use Blue Origin or use United Launch Alliance, which uses Blue Origin engines for their rockets. So there's some catching up there to do, but eventually there'll be competition.
I wanted to speaking of camping, I want a camper van. And Renault, the French car company, has just recently announced like this new line of like three commercial vehicles. One is like a delivery van, one is like a normal van, and one is like a utility vehicle. But the delivery van I'm very interested in. It's called pardon my French, it's called the Estafette, which, is their tall delivery van. I want one of those just so I can modify it into my own camper van. Like that's my new dream. Originally, I was thinking about like if
Yeah.
Rivian ever starts selling their Amazon delivery vehicle, which they have. They have just recently started, by the way. But it's only for like they're only selling to companies, and you can't. While you can buy just a fleet of one, they're probably not going to be too happy about you know you modifying it to be a camper van. But this is supposed to be like you could just buy it and you don't like there's no requirements. So if ever they come over to the US or if ever I can import one, I would really really like one to convert. The other ones are called part of my French again, like the Golette and the Trafic. This is my high school French coming back. Yeah, they're dropping in
Perfect.
2026 and I'm really excited to see how they are on the inside because the range is supposed to be really good. Actually, it's supposed to be like I probably should have written this down, but I think like over 300 kilometers of range, which is already better than the Rivian vans because the Rivian vans only go like 100 and like 13 miles or something, which is like nothing. Like if you want to go camping,
Yeah.
that's like I don't know, one trip out, and then you gotta figure out how to try and charge it.
Yeah, if you want to go camping and come back, your
Yeah,
destination's a little
you're
slimmer,
yeah,
not
you're
going
you're
quite as
not gonna
far.
come back. Well, I mean, like you'd
Yeah.
probably end up having to go somewhere where it's not like as in the wilderness as you would probably like. But
Right.
yeah,
You're
I'm
looking for
looking for
power.
power. I'm looking for range. I'm looking for a blank canvas that I can take out the back, or like even better, it comes without a back, installed. And I just want to like cut up some wood, stick a bed in there, make a table, make some chairs, and I'll just like, go off grid for 2 weeks. Like that sounds like the dream, honestly.
My 9 to 5 Mac colleague and the happy hour co-host Chance Miller has a goal this year of taking 2 weeks off,
Oh
and
yeah,
doing van life. And he sent me this as well, and was like, this is the
yeah.
one. Um, and for both of you, what I want to say for both of you is please like and subscribe and rate the podcast and leave a review and sponsor the podcast to make this happen for both of you,
Yeah.
and help me
God,
tag along
yes.
on the
That'd be
electric van
so,
life.
so fun. Yeah. Anybody watching, please sponsor this podcast so I can go and live in the wild for 2
Another bit of meta commentary here. 2 weeks ago, it snowed for the first time in 130 years on the Gulf Coast, and like more than like 2 inches.
Oh,
Like
wow.
8 or 10 or 12. But yeah, today it's like 80 degrees and hot, and oh my goodness, I am in a
I can
humid
see, like,
room.
it's just coming across like a video here.
My
Yeah.
glasses keep fogging up.
It's like you're like nice
Yeah.
and dewy.
Yeah.
You've got like, you look like you put moisturizer on, but actually you're just really, really warm.
Yeah, it's a sauna in here. I do it for the
Yeah.
pod.
Meanwhile, it's like
Oh man.
severe weather warnings here. Like we've got trees falling down. It's blowing wind outside. Like it could not be more different.
We got a little tornado watch brewing too, which is why from all this heat, and then like in a couple of days it'll be 42 degrees again. Oh man. Debug mode. Can Elon Musk brute force ownership of OpenAI? This comes from a declaration by Elon Musk and a few comrades who, through a letter from his attorney to the Wall Street Journal, said, we're making a bid for OpenAI, the for-profit company that the nonprofit is releasing, basically. And we want to buy it for $96.4 billion,
Something
I
like
believe,
that.
was the number. Yeah, which is, there's a lot of range for, how do you value OpenAI, the for-profit, company that will eventually be spun out and, listed and all that, I imagine. But I think that's on the lower side by about $200 billion from what I've read.
I think he did also say, and like he also delivered this letter to like the OpenAI board. But I think in the letter it said something like, we'll match, like, because OpenAI is like also currently like they're going through like a funding round, and I don't remember if it's completed yet, but they're also like in this process of like spinning out the company into like a for-profit company. And they're like, oh, we'll also match like any other offers or whatever.
We'll match or raise any competing offers.
Yeah.
If there are
and
any,
then like Sam Altman went on, he was like on some podcast, some interview, and he got asked this question, and he was like, oh yeah, we're like, we've already rejected this offer. Like it is not like, we're not considering this. And then he's like, oh yeah, I feel sorry for Elon. I'm just like, ooh, like, the girls are fighting again.
Like you said, yeah. The response from the day of was no thank you from Sam Altman was no thank you, but we will buy Twitter for $9.74 billion if you want. Which is just, kind of funny.
Very feisty, which as an onlooker, I love, but as a supporter of humanity in general, I'm just like, my God, like I'm like, can we not, like, this is so
the other side of this, I mean, I don't think there's a solid answer yet for is this, can Elon Musk brute force ownership of OpenAI?
Yeah, it's a legitimate question. Like
the answer,
he basically came in and like more or less like, brute force ownership of Twitter on some degree, even though the board was basically like, yeah, we're holding you to this because you can't just like bullshit, offers.
Yeah.
But here we are in this reality, and can he do it again? And that is a significantly pressing question, I think.
Yeah, and it's also just like I saw on day one there were a few different takes that I was seeing flying by. I didn't capture them, but it seemed to be that the day one reaction was some people saying he can't buy it, it's not for sale, like it's being converted into a for-profit company, but it's not up for sale though. And then someone else who seemed equally as intelligent was like, technically it is, and it's just being sold to Sam Altman for way below value. And so there's kind of a threat here, which is that the plan is for Sam Altman to run this for-profit company and make it huge because the revolution they've started with AI, and it seems possible that Elon could be disruptive. And the background here is that OpenAI was started as the nonprofit with a for-profit part, like subsidiary basically. But Elon Musk was part of it, a part of that original group, and helped spin it up. But then wanted to run it and make it a for-profit company, and that was rejected at the time. And this is before like ChatGPT 3 and 3.5. And so he left. Elon left, and then ChatGPT 3 and 3.5 and 4 and all these other models come out, and it's Elon makes XAI and uses X data to train it, and kind of makes a Me Too product that's not as leading yet. It's getting better, but it's not there, with Grok. And then this is just like, okay, maybe there's a new. It's not as there's never a period for OpenAI as long as the company's been something that people follow, where it's just no
It's
drama.
always
It's
always
high
drama.
drama constantly.
Like I sort of feel for like the reporters that follow like the AI beat, because they're just like, okay, I gotta wake up at 3 a.m. to write about these people having like a hissy fit on X, about
Yeah, and if the product wasn't there, like if it wasn't this something that is people think can be massively valued, then no one would deal with these people. But
but here we are.
but the fact is they've got a
Yeah,
product that yeah that
yeah,
people
it's
want to
always
invest.
drama, always
So
something.
yeah. And then separately today, sort of, I think, to kind of take back the attention from what feels like a while ago at this point, but it was just 2 days ago. Um, as we're discussing this, Sam Altman posted on X that the company wants to be more open about their roadmap, and to that end announced ChatGPT 4.5 and ChatGPT 5. Says 4.5 will come in a matter of weeks, and ChatGPT 5 will come in a matter of months. So this year, and there's been this. You've got GTP 3, 3.5, 4, but then they had, and those are the large language models that are pretty straightforward. And then they've got these reasoning models, O1, skip O2, because maybe it's the carrier, has the copyright for it. Go to O3, O3 mini. And I've kind of thought that the reasoning models were to distract from, or just change the goalpost of, well, where's ChatGPT 5? And it seems like they're taking this opportunity to combine both the traditional LLMs and then these new reasoning models, and they want to make ChatGPT 5 be this one model that can handle both kinds of requests. And that sounds great. It also sounds very hard, because the reason they're separate now is because you get very different results from each model. For example, if I want to ask ChatGPT to just simply copyright a story I'm doing, flag the typos, the grammar, spelling, punctuation, the GPT models are great at that. The reasoning models
Yeah,
are not. And it's just, one's language based and one's, much more intense. And because it's smarter, it's also dumber for
yeah.
that kind of a
It's
request.
like we're basically
And
taking
so,
like different parts of the brain and then sticking them into like separate verticals of access, right? Like if you think about like the human brain, like
yeah,
there's the language portion and then there's like the reasoning portion. And then you need to work them together,
yeah,
but then you're missing like all the other stuff. So it's like it's difficult, I think. I mean, and for all I know, like they probably have already done this. And I'm by no means an AI expert, but I know like generally like how these models are built and the thought process that goes into building them. But that also seems like a very expensive model to run. And I have to start wondering about like how much money, like how much profit they're actually making from like the service itself, and like the consumers of the service, like how much they're charging for like per token, like on the API side, for example.
yeah. Well, they said they're undercharging for the $200 a month pro plan
Yeah,
based on
they're
what people are doing with
undercharging,
it.
which is like a worry, because if they're already undercharging
Yeah,
for
right.
the consumer pro plan, where you're probably not sending it, like as many requests as like humanly possible, then like how much more expensive is this new model going to be to run? And how are they going to charge for it?
Right. And they said that these changes are both coming to ChatGPT, the product that we're talking about, and API.
Yeah.
Their pipeline that people can buy into. And another goal of GTP5 is that from that point on, so all the O models will be included, all of the reasoning models will be included in the GPT model, and they'll no longer 4.5 will not have a the chain of thought where they expose somewhat of what the model is thinking to give you the result that it gives you. And this is sort of like DeepSeek really did this, revealed, in the user interface, this is what the model is kind of like thinking. And from that, you can learn it interpreted it this way. Let me change what I'm saying so that I get a better result. OpenAI shows chain of thought with the O models, but not the GPT models yet. But Sam says that with GTP5, chain of thought will be included going forward for all models. And I guess one of the short-term problem, besides all of that, is that they've just got this massive complexity in the user interface for model selection. So even if you just say there's the GPT like language expertise model that like appeals to me, or there's the reasoning models, the O series models that are more like logic and like engineer minded. If you just want the best with GPTs, then you've got GPT 4.0, which they say is great for most questions. GPT 4.0 with scheduled tasks, which is you select this separately, which allows you to ask GPT to follow up later. There's also GPT 4.0 mini, which they say is faster for most questions. There's great for most questions
It's
and
so
faster for
confusing.
most questions. And then GPT legacy model. Then you've got the O series models. One uses advanced reasoning. O3 mini, fast at advanced reasoning. O3 mini high, great at coding and logic. That's wild. And they know that, and they want to improve on however that user interface works and narrow it down, and then get to the point where with ChatGPT 5, like we know what it'll be now. It'll be all of those things in a logical user interface, one model that tries to respond based on what you say, whether it needs to be more language based or logic based, I suppose.
I think the main barrier is like people just want to like click a button and then ask something, and then they just want the best response. But like they need to
Yeah, I mean that's
yeah,
the magic
right.
of a search engine,
But
right? Is
like if they really
yeah.
want to go that sort of universal response for everything route, then they need to figure out like how to combine all of that. This might be controversial, but I think they probably shouldn't have to give users, like basic users, such fine-grained control over like what to select, because the basic user is not going to understand that. Like that's too many clicks, too many thoughts for just a normal user.
Yeah, and it's not just a ChatGPT thing, an OpenAI thing. Like I've spent time with the paid version of Claude from Anthropic, and they've got a similar issue where they've got these different names for their different models, and this one's best at at composing words, and this one's best at thinking, and they at least try to tell you what's what, and this one's more you get fewer less time with this one, and but it is all. I mean, even for someone who's super enthusiastic about this stuff, it's a bit much, and so this simplification of it, I think, is a
Yeah.
necessary
Speaking of
direction to go in.
Anthropic, they haven't released the new model in so long. Like they got to be cooking something, right? I can only guess at what they're cooking, but
They
like
surely are.
surely they've got to be like something's got to be going on. They can't just be doing nothing. But like certainly the pace of
Yeah.
releases from OpenAI and other competitors are making me worry a little bit.
Hmm.
Like Claude is still, I think for me, probably the best one that I've used for programming purposes. I feel like I get like a better quality of response,
Uh-huh.
but the like I mean the context window is like way smaller. The like the amount of like just raw information that I can get from it without it either slowing down significantly or telling me like, hey, you're sort of getting close to like the limit. It's like really starting to bother me. So I'm just like, come on, like you've got to be working on something new. Like don't leave me hanging. I want to
Yeah.
like you guys, but like you're making this
Yeah.
hard. Come on.
Right. I recently put together a folder on my phone of just all the different AI apps, so I can not just spend all my time with one or two, and
Yeah.
try and at least check in with others. because I'm very satisfied with ChatGPT. And then when I won't pay for both ChatGPT and Claude, but when I paid for Claude, I was really happy with what I was getting back from it. I mean, um, it's I think it's better at conversational. You know, give it a problem, talk it through. It's almost like therapy in the way that it responds is a lot less
Yeah.
sort of sterile and clinical. You know, and part of it's just a user interface. You know, it uses a serif font, and it uses like it's almost like tans and sort of like sepia filter colors, and it's meant to just be more friendly. And they've got this
Yeah,
focus on
it's almost
safety
like
and
the polar
everything.
opposite, I would
Um,
say, of like the user
yeah.
experience with like an OpenAI product where everything is either black, like straight black or straight
Mhm.
white, like very sterile, very modern, like non-serif fonts, very like direct, very fast, to like Claude, which is just like it feels like you're sort of walking like through the woods and you've come across a wise old tree, and you ask the tree a question and it responds back to you with like probably a pretty good answer, to be honest, and it's like totally different.
Yeah. Anything artistic too. With Claude, I would say, um, here's a piece of writing I've done. Call it poetry or songwriting, either one, but lyrics. And it would respond so encouragingly and specifically. It could say why this is good. You could ask for criticism, and it's like it seems like much more of an artist tool
Yeah,
than
I'm
ChatGPT
sure that's like
does.
intentional on some level, like
And
very,
and
very
I
much intentional. Mhm.
mhm, mhm, yeah, and it shows how these models can be, there can be product differentiation that's not just
Yep.
how state of the art is it, but how do you package it
Yeah.
up, and but
Yeah.
yeah, what's going on,
Yeah,
Claude?
come on,
Keep it
Anthropic,
coming.
you got I don't know how many programmers are using Claude for programming stuff. Like, it's good. It's time. It's time for the new thing, I think.
Yeah. Oh yeah,
Oh, I hear that fan.
yeah.
What's the temperature in there? Do you know?
Well, I want listeners to picture my recording environment today as alligators chomping at the bits, and it's purely a swamp, and we're on a fan boat, but we can't run the fan. And there's Lana Del Rey and her crocodile hunter husband, and there's a mosquito the size of an airplane, and yeah, I love living in the South where the air is so thick you can see
God,
it.
I used to live in Georgia in like horse country, like north of Atlanta, like I want to say an hour and a half, like Alpharetta, Milton area. Nothing around there, all
Okay.
horse country. There's one Waffle House, which I do miss. I do miss Waffle House. But what I do not miss is how hot and humid it would get in the summer. God, I just, I hated
Mm,
it. I hate being hot and humid. It's just the worst.
hmm.
I'd rather be
Hmm.
dry and hot
Yeah.
than humid and hot.
Hmm. I used to live
Uh,
in Chatsworth, Georgia. It's also about an hour and a half north of Atlanta,
yeah.
right below Tennessee. And I went back in 2019. I lived there from pre-K to fifth grade, and I went back as
Mm.
an adult for the first time ever. And it was like walking through a dream, but I couldn't believe just how far
Oh
even the
yeah.
closest
It's
Best Buy
always
was. And I
like,
was like,
well, it
glad
was
I
like
didn't grow up
45
here.
minutes from like where I was. I didn't even, yeah.
Yeah, my town where I live is Ocean Springs, Mississippi, and it's a
Mm.
lovely destination for tourists and looking for a cool place, nice quiet city like a smaller version of New Orleans. And I guess now we're off of the Gulf of
God.
America, according to Apple Maps and Google Maps, depending on how close you
Yeah.
zoom in.
Yeah, that sure
That
did
happened this
happen.
week.
Oh my God.
Yeah, I yeah, pull request. I wanted to flag. I just can't let it go without mentioning it. But growing up on the Gulf Coast and being the Apple fan that I am, and having Apple be the focus of my journalism, it was just very cool to see. And I did not expect this, even though I knew it was coming. But Apple to sort of like the company come to New Orleans in terms of like Tim Cook and Eddie Q and others, and like go to the places where I go. Of course, the Apple Store and Metairie, which is right out of New Orleans, but also like this po' boy
Ooh,
shop that I go to, which is like, big breaded
God, I
sandwich with
love
like
po'
shrimp
boys.
and yeah. Tim Cook was like at the one that I go to in New Orleans, and that was really cool to see. I had to post about it on 9 to 5 Mac, even if like only a couple of people cared. But then there was this Tim Cook tweet that was like, we enjoyed our time in New Orleans, basically. But part of it, and the reason that Apple was there is the Super Bowl was in New Orleans at the Superdome, and Apple Music
Yep.
sponsors the halftime show for the last few years. It used to be Pepsi for all that time, and now it's Apple Music, which makes sense. But there was this video of Tim Cook, the CEO of Apple, of course, resting his head on Steve Gleason, who is a former Saints player he lives with ALS. And Gleason is like a hero around here, just motivational as all get out. I mean, to see him and what he does is amazing. And seeing Cook and Gleason together was like, it's really special, even just seeing the video. So I wanted to call that out. If you haven't seen, I'll link in the show notes, but it's just a Tim Cook tweet and it's got a video, and a very small part of it is Tim Cook resting his head on Steve Gleason's head. And I want to just for not getting any details wrong, I want to read from Wikipedia just who Steve Gleason is and a little bit of a summary. So Steve Gleason is an American former professional football player who played as a safety with the New Orleans Saints of the National Football League. He played for the Saints through the 2006 season from 2000. As a free agent in 2008, Gleason retired from the NFL after 8 years, or 8 seasons. Gleason is particularly known for his block of a punt early in a 2006 game, which became a symbol of recovery in New Orleans in the team's first home game after Hurricane Katrina. So that alone was just big for the city. And there's a statue of Steve Gleason in like the
Oh, that's
position of
awesome.
blocking the punt, which is not common, and like blocking a punt isn't common. It's a big deal. And so like for that reason alone, he was a big deal in New Orleans. But then, say 3 years after retiring from the NFL, he revealed that he was battling ALS, known as Lou Gehrig's disease as well. And then, quoting again, his experience while living with the disease, his experiences were captured on video over the course of a 5-year period and featured in the 2016 documentary Gleason. So, anyone who wants to learn more about him and like why this all is very special and why he's so inspiring, check out the documentary Gleason. But that was just a really cool thing to see was Tim Cook and Steve Gleason touching heads at the Superdome, and like my town away from my town. So that was really cool. That
That
made me
is
smile.
that is very cool. I feel like it's always like so interesting or like so unexpected when like big personalities like show up where you are or like where you have been, and you're like, I know that place.
Hmm.
Like I've been there. I've walked the same grounds. That's always like really cool. I haven't had that happen to me yet, but
Yeah, I've had the experience of like obviously like seeing Apple executives at
right,
Apple
right. But
Park
that's like their
and
ground.
other events, but exactly. It's still cool, but then like seeing it on your ground, it's like that's not normal. That's not
Yeah.
that's
Like I
different.
think when WWDC, which Apple's Worldwide Developers Conference, used to be hosted in San Francisco at Moscone, and I think Tim Cook used to visit the
Yeah.
Union Square Apple store. Like that's cool. Would have liked it to have happened when I was here. I mean, I am still here, but like you know, like it just hits different.
Yeah. Yeah. And so that was my pull request, something I thought was a really cool win this week. And then I want to go from there to my sort of sandbox prediction from last week, which was that well, actually, I think I predicted that the Eagles would win the Super Bowl, but I believe the Chiefs would. And
hmm
I really
It
enjoyed the
was
Super Bowl.
I'll tell you what, I didn't watch the Super Bowl, but I watched the halftime show, which I really did enjoy.
Yeah,
I thought it was very
yeah,
well done. Like I hadn't seen that kind of dynamic range on a video production
hmm
live like that in like forever. It was done so well. Like props to the cameraman. Like
yeah.
those people were like running backwards like across the stage. Like I could not. The second step, I would literally just like trip and fall and like die.
Yeah, I struggle with just not looking like a
Yeah,
goober when I
exactly.
go out in public. So Definitely. But I am kind of sorry to say that my prediction came through though, which was that the Eagles did win by a long shot. And I really enjoyed the Super Bowl for that reason because the Saints were, my football team were expected to hire the offensive coordinator, the play caller for the Philadelphia Eagles,
Mhm.
regardless of what happened at that game. But then by the Eagles winning, like majorly, it became really cool that Kellen Moore is the next Saints head coach. And so not only like was the prediction of the Eagles winning against kind of expectations kind of neat, but to see that victory roll over into the Saints have had a very bad few years as a football team. To have a head coach who just or not to have a new head coach who was the play caller for the team that won the Super Bowl. This has been cool for the city. And something else that the Super Bowl in New Orleans had an effect on was like people were saying, you know, potholes that I've ran over for years have been filled now. Please don't put the potholes back when the Super Bowl's over.
That's such a classic. Yeah. People don't care about anything unless it fixes the
Yeah.
potholes, and then they're like, "Oh no, keep it, keep it. It's good, it's good."
Yeah. I wanted to make a new prediction for this week, which is another Sunday night one, but it's that White Lotus season 3 premieres on HBO or Max or however you approach it. And I just think it's going to be great. I think it's going to be my next appointment viewing, show. And, we talked about Severance before, but I really enjoyed kind of like the dark weirdness of White Lotus season 1 and 2. And I miss out on a lot of shows that people like watch in real time and reference in culture. But this is one that I'm glad I don't. It's one of the ones that makes the cut
What
for me.
what is the synopsis of White Lotus? I've never heard this before.
That's a tough one. It's a tough one. And both seasons, every season's a little bit different,
Okay.
but has a little bit of a connection. But I guess I would just say that it's kind of a mystery. You're kind of a
Oh,
whodunit
I
mystery.
like
You
whodunits.
know?
I watch Glass Onion.
Yeah, yeah. It's a whodunit. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Okay.
It's like Glass Onion vibes, but
Ah,
a
I gotta
series
check
and
that
not a
out
movie.
then.
Yeah, we'll go with that.
Okay.
Yeah, White Lotus. Season 1 and 2 are already out. Season 3 starts
I
on Sunday night.
Yeah, I gotta check that
So,
out.
the,
I love mysteries.
yeah, there's also The Gorge, which I didn't know about, but it's a movie coming to Apple TV Plus, I think on
Is
Friday.
this
And
Wait, is
I
this the one
usually,
where there's like people, like one person on both sides, and then there's like a giant canyon, and then like in the trailer they're like, "Oh, there's
yes,
monsters in the canyon. Oh no, we gotta communicate with like light
yes,
signals, and
yes.
then we'll fall in love." Okay.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. That's the one. And it comes on a Friday. And I usually watch like 5 to 10 movies per month, and I keep a journal of like what I've watched, what day it was, so that the reason I started doing this was years ago. There was a girl who was, have you seen this movie? This movie? I'm like, I really don't know. I think, and then I'd watch it and then, oh yeah, I did see this movie, And so to never be in the situation again, I started like 3 years ago,
Oh
just
yeah.
logging what I watch and then also have a list of like what to watch. But for some reason in January and February, I guess I've just been too scatterminded, but I've not had the focus to sit down and watch a movie that I really enjoy doing. And so I think The Gorge is like
Mhm.
mindless enough, it looks like it at least, that I can just run it and not feel like I'm doing mental gymnastics to keep up. So I'm gonna check
That
that
does
one out
seem
this
like
weekend
something
too.
I would enjoy just like having on, and maybe I'll pay attention to it, maybe not. I did just rewatch The Menu, which was as fantastic as I remembered it. Yeah,
I saw that in
same.
theaters when it was
But
out.
now it's on Netflix. Love Anya Taylor-Joy. I think she's really, really great actress.
Hmm.
Um, but another TV show that I have just watched is actually a K-drama. I don't know how many of our audience is actually gonna like watch a K-drama, but it's called Trauma Code: Heroes on Call. It's like a hospital like drama, but every single one of my friends who I've recommended this show to, like whether or not they like K-dramas, agreed 100% with me that it's one of the best shows that they've watched all year. It is so good and it is so well done, like so realistic, but also ridiculous in that K-drama way at the same time, and funny. Um, that it just like wins people over. I highly, highly recommend it.
What's the name again?
Okay, it's on Netflix. That's another plus, but it's called Trauma Code.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
the English
Trauma
name is like
Code.
sort of
Okay, I'll check it
sort of
out.
weird. Like it's one of those ones where there's like a colon in it, but it's, yeah, it's called Trauma Code: Heroes on Call. It's a hospital drama. but it's one of the funnier ones, and I think it's one of the best acted ones also. The actors are, like, very famous in it, actually.
Nice.
There's, like, other hospital dramas with famous actors, but the ones that are good are depressing, and the ones that are not good that try to like, the funnier ones, but this one is one of the funnier ones that are but
Yeah.
it's also serious at some times, and it's just so well done. Highly, highly recommend it.
Very cool. Honestly, for me, for the week, I want to
Yeah.
run down my runtime error, which is sort of a fail, and it's not the humidity, even though when I look at my camera, I feel like I've already taken the shower that I will definitely take after this is over. But just to go back
Yeah.
to self driving as we do each week, um, I have last week I think I said I've got FSD 1263 in the Model 3 now, um,
Yep.
hardware 3. I was impressed that it wouldn't stop at the red light flashing four-way stop near my house. It would just go through like ordinarily, like a four-way stop, which was really cool to see. It now turns left on
Oh,
four
boy.
red lights and counting. So just a normal red light traffic stop, wait for it to turn green, then yield and go left. It will stop and then I'll have to just abort autopilot and self-driving and take over, which is what you do. It's like all part of the design. And that's what's being sold right now, is that you watch and take over as needed. But this new version, I've not had a bug like this in my time with the Tesla car until this one. But and it tries to enter my neighborhood. It's like there's a street with a tree in the middle, a little divider, and so there's the enter on the right, leave on the left, and it thinks that
Oh,
the left
boy.
is the way to go. On the plus side, it can pull into my driveway, which is a bit uphill, and almost get into the garage without assistance, which is new. Still can't autopilot to a supercharger and just know to pick an empty spot, back up to it, and let you plug up. It takes you way over there. But so it's a mixed bag, and it's kind of like the first time where I've been like, oh, this. I hope I don't live on this version of the software for a while, because it's got some things that I don't like and that I have to
Yeah.
be mindful about. I also wanted to give just pay some attention to the Cybertruck jerk, who admittedly was not paying attention and was just entirely relying on self-driving, and probably did whatever to fool the system into thinking he was paying attention, and his Cybertruck ran into a
Yeah, this
pole
was
with
quite a
FSD.
big news story in
And
the autonomy world because, like, I think it's rare to see such, like, an egregious issue on a Cybertruck, no less, supposedly, like, the latest hardware, the most leading, technology that there is, and, I think yeah, his response was like, "Thanks for building such a passively protective car that saved me," and I was like, "Dude, like, come on, like, do you hear yourself?" I don't know, and he was like, "Oh, I didn't wanna
right.
release, like, the video because there's gonna be" or, like, anti-Elon people are gonna be, like, using it for, just, like, cannon fodder. I'm just like, "Look, an issue is an issue is an issue, right?" Like, we're trying to improve the road
Mhm.
safety for everybody, right? That's the entire point of a self-driving vehicle. Like, if we don't take the issues at face value as we see them, like, regardless of, your leanings or, your biases, but if we don't take these issues at full value, like, we're gonna build a system that is gonna be more dangerous for people than it is gonna be safe.
Yeah, it's coming either way. And I would say, like, this fella did a disservice by just not paying attention while he was driving. I mean, I think he was pretty open about that. Was like, this happened because I wasn't paying attention. Thanks for the
Yeah.
truck for saving me. The system is not. It's like supervised. It is not unsupervised yet. Even if Elon says supervised is coming this year, it's not even advertised yet. It's here. So I think my takeaway from this, both my experience with this like improved, but also two steps forward, one step back update for me, and then the Cybertruck jerk, is that driving, like human driving, that's like the standard. Self-driving on its own,
Mhm.
not safer than a human driver. Human driver with self-driving is safer than a human driver. But again, to make that distinction, human driver safer than self-driving on its own right now. Human driver plus safe driving better than a human driver. It's like it assists you. You help it. It's mutual, and that's better because there's like eyes on all sides of the road. It sees things that you don't see, but you also need to see things that it can't see yet. And so for someone to all of these people who abuse self-driving, as it is today, I think do a disservice. But also, if you are skeptical of this technology and then you hear that your vehicle will try to turn left on 4 red lights within the span of a week or two.
Yeah.
That's also discouraging. So it's
Pluses and minuses.
I'm amazed enough. Yeah, I'm amazed enough by what does work. And again, this is like the 4 red light thing is new for me. I haven't had an issue like that before. And I imagine that doesn't last long, but yeah, a little mixed bag there. But again, moving beyond that, Elon says that the Cybercab will drive around Austin this June.
I don't know. I'm gonna be pressing a big X to doubt there. Yeah. I found it fun that Jay Leno on his show got a preview, or I guess a walk around of the new Model Y, the new design, with like a couple of Tesla execs, and he was asking about like the tri-motor stuff or something. And they were like, "Oh yeah, it's only gonna be some models, whatever." And then Jay Leno was like, "Oh, but also the Roadster, right?" And they're like, "Oh yeah, the Roadster." It's like, yeah, oh yeah, I forgot it still exists. It's like so far out of like their peripheral memory that they're just like, don't even like talk about it normally anymore.
You might as well ask about the semi truck, right?
Well, that one I suppose they have actually delivered on some level, but the Roadster is literally undelivered.
Yeah.
When did they announce it?
I want to say like 4 years ago for the
something
the
like
second
that.
generation. Then
Editing
upcoming
Sophia
design.
put that on the screen here somewhere. But yeah, they announced it this day, and no updates, nothing since. There's a lot of reservation holders, but
yeah, existence is finite. So that's one concern. My smile from that video with Jay Leno and the new Model Y is that the turn signal stock is back, and I think they acknowledge that sometimes they delete and they delete too much.
Yeah,
so things come back.
If it ain't broke, don't remove it. And they removed it, and it turns out that in fact, more than it not being broke, it was needed.
Yeah, there's a long history of.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a standard, press down on the left stalk to press up on the right stalk.
It turns out
signals and
it turns out car design is actually the way that it is for a reason. We have seat belts for a reason.
Yeah, and basically like doing volume up and volume down on a steering wheel is not a great.
Nor is making it touch sensitive.
No.
Yeah.
I don't have that problem. I've got stalks and clicky buttons.
Yeah.
And a rogue left signal.
Well, I'm pretty hungry. But thanks for chatting.
I'm pretty I'm pretty pretty I don't want to say cooked, like cooked and crash out. Like I hear these things that I read on Twitter and my
chat, are we
12-year-old kid tells me, but I'm feeling cooked right now.
In a literal sense,
I'm feeling cooked right now.
It seems like you've been boiled alive in that room for the past 2 hours or so.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm glad that to listen to a podcast, you don't need to feel what the room is like.
There was a startup at CES that was trying to bring smell-o-vision back. Yeah, don't do it.
Terrible. Don't do it.
It has not existed for a reason.
Don't do it.
Please don't make it exist now.
Like if we can get noise cancellation for sense, sometimes
literally
that
the
would
opposite
be really cool.
of what they were trying to do.
That would be good.
Yeah.
All right, Sophia, this has been great. I'm gonna go.
Please do hydrate
now.
Don't just feel over and die in that room. That would be suboptimal.
I donated blood 2 days ago. This is bad.
All right.
Bad thing to do.
Yeah. Go
and
hydrate.
follow up to that.
You can follow us at the usual socials down in the description below. If you like the podcast, please let us know. Leave a comment, leave a like, and if you're on YouTube, subscribe, or if you're on Apple Podcasts, also subscribe, or wherever you get your podcasts.
You
Follow for
you
your
follow
podcasts.
free podcasts,
Okay.
and you subscribe to paid podcasts.
Follow. Yeah, this is free, but do
Yeah.
follow if you like the podcast. And I suppose I'll see you next week, Zach.
Hey, we'll see. I'll swim
Yeah,
over
bye.
to you. That's right. Bye.